The November 29th, 2022 meeting of the Transportation Committee will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Burgess. Present. Mr. Burgess is present. Mr. Colby. Here. Mr. Colby is present. Mr. Frazier. Mr. Frazier is present. Ms. Hasman. Ms. Hasman is present. Mr. Keller is excused. Chair Morris.
Here.
Chair Morris is present. Ms. Smith. Ms. Smith is present.
Is there anyone signed up to speak for the public forum?
There is not.
Okay. Is there anyone present who is not signed up to speak who would like to address the committee at this time? Okay, none. Okay, at this time I'd like to introduce Robert Franklin, Chief Financial Officer of Monroe County, who is here to present the 2023 proposed Monroe County budget as it pertains to the Transportation Committee. We will have a question and answer period following the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if this will be as short as planning and development, but it's going to be really close. So within our Department of Transport, well, there really is one department that is pertinent to the Transportation Committee, and that would be our Department of Transportation. I'm going to suggest that while the numbers don't really show it on this slide, DOT's budget next year is primarily a maintenance of effort budget. I'm going to point out a couple things. Payroll and benefits are increasing just $358,000. It's about 5.7% of their budget previously. And the cost of utilities and fuel are adding another $566,000. So what is really driving the big swing in these numbers are the following three items. First and foremost, we are budgeting the use of $6.2 million from our debt service fund to fully redeem a bond anticipation note next year. And this is to avoid issuing bonds for highway lighting projects. This was a planned decision regarding use of available cash in the debt service fund and part of a broader approach we've been taking in managing county debt. Second driver of the swing in these numbers, we have increased our cash funding of capital projects by $3.3 million and now include our culvert replacement program, our milling, resurfacing, and recycling program, DOT replacement vehicles, and the traffic sign retroreflectivity program. Each of these capital projects are annually recurring of relatively the same dollar amount, and it just makes better financial sense to budget for them up front rather than issue bonded debt, which has to be repaid with interest. Lastly, the third main driver of the change in appropriations, we have additional appropriations for commercial services, public works contracts, and construction supplies. And that's really all related to an increase in our New York State CHIPS funding. It's about $2.1 million. There is some small swings from year to year, contractual services versus supplies, and that's an annual flip-flop that you'll see throughout our budget, just reflecting the nature of how we approach the CHIPS program and how we funnel work through our towns. Last comment, RGRTA. They are not a component unit of the county. They are actually a component unit of New York State, but through state statute, we are required to contribute to their operations. So I think the committee is well aware that that has been a requirement for years and years. So we do not actually account for this particular payment to the bus company in DOT. You will find a budget line if you look in finance unallocated. So that's our contribution to agencies where we normally keep that. And that's it for the presentation. Mr. Chair, right back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Franklin. I'll give you an opportunity to get situated and then I'll open it up for some questions. Legislator Colby.
Like, is this the one that's working? I'm on page 327. I see that we are moving $1 million, it looks like, from the fund balance into the, and that gives us a cash surplus, it looks like to me, to the net county support of over $283,000. Why do we have a a cash oversport there where I never seen that before, I don't think.
Mr. Chairman, correct. I'm not sure any legislators probably seen that before. It's the administrative division within DOT that we really just account for the overall fund balance within our road fund. We don't apportion any fund balance within the road fund to the specific divisions. So it just makes life easier in the budget and controller's office to account for it in our administration. So road fund does have surplus fund balance, and we elected to use $1 million of their excess fund balance as a means to offset a further increase in the real property tax levy.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, the extra funds will be carried over into next year or will be used in projects that have been designated? I don't know if I'm following you quite right, but that question,
So, Mr. Chairman, it might be more helpful if we turn the page back to 324 and look at Department of Transportation as a department and not its individual divisions. On page 324, you'll see the bottom line. Actually, I want to, right above the bottom line, which is net county support, is the last line of revenue, appropriated fund balance. Appropriated fund balance has several components. In the 22 amended budget, it was strictly all the use of our reserve for bonded debt. Looking at budget for 23, there's actually a couple different components. I mentioned in the presentation that we are using the unrestricted and available cash in our debt service fund to fully redeem a $6.1 million bond anticipation note. So that $6.1 million is part of this appropriated fund balance.
that's part of that $9 million, why that's so high.
That's right. Another component is the $1 million of excess DOT fund balance. And then the third component is, again, a use of our reserve for bonded debt for existing bond issuance. So those three components make up the $9.7 million. And even though we're using $1 million of surplus DOT fund balance, there still is for the department a required tax support of $27.5 million. It's just that when we use the $1 million of DOT excess fund balance, you have to show that revenue line somewhere.
So that's why it's in that
Yeah. and
area,
rather
then
than
it negatives out
Yep,
over here.
That's right. It's just a choice rather than put it all in administration, rather than try to apportion it to all the divisions.
Thank you. To follow up on your discussion you had about putting more of the chips and the culvert repair, not the chips, but the culvert repair
Yes.
and other things into cash capital. Are we increasing the cash capital through you, Mr. Chairman, for the county as a whole? Or are we just moving some of the cash capital designated into transportation?
Mr. Chairman, the county as a whole, we are increasing our cash capital contributions. As a county, this current budget, 22, was, I'm just going to round off, $14.3 million. It's increasing to $16.6 million across the county. I do that, Mr. Chairman, because for culvert replacement, it's a $1.6 million program every year, and milling resurfacing is a $1.5 million program every year. When we issue bonds that come with a 15-year payback period, it might be a 20-year payback period, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I looked at the projection of those over time. It's year 11 or year 12 where the annual debt service on those projects exceeds the 1.5 or the $1.6 million had we just budgeted right from the start.
Well, it's a Ways and Means question, so I'll wait for that. I'll leave the floor at this time.
Legislator Smith. Mike.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to the administration, on page 327, why are personal services and employee benefits going down for the administration and planning?
Well, Mr. Chairman, within this particular division of DOT, there is a shift out of one FTE in administration. There is a small increase in temporary help, but then there's the regular contractual pay and step increases to offset that reduction of the one FTE.
Thank you. Through the chair, on page 330, why are interdepartmental charges projected to increase so much? Again, to over 690,000 after being about 332,000 in 2021.
I just need to flip one page, Mr. Chairman. Highway and bridge operations. Mr. Chairman, one of the more significant increases in fleet maintenance, about over $60,000, is really the chargeback from fleet maintenance. Fleet maintenance would, for DOT, is primarily the use of diesel fuel and gasoline. I'm just looking at some of the other chargeback items. From our internal service fund, there is an increase significant in workers' compensation, about a $40-some thousand increase. Again, I think I mentioned in a previous committee, these chargebacks generally follow a 3-year rolling average of actual claims incurred. Those are the primary drivers, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And through the chair on page 554, why is there a $35,000 decrease in salaries for the DOT administration division?
Well, actually, Mr. Chairman, there is a position that has been moved out of DOT administration over to I think 003 Highway and Bridge Operations. That's a permanent assistant position. So this is actually down a position in terms of this division. Of course, that savings is offset by increases from our collective bargaining agreements and step increases.
Thank you. Through the chair to the administration, on page 556, why is there a $140,000 increase in salaries in the traffic operations and permits division?
Mr. Chairman, as the department allocates their staff across their divisions, traffic operations and permits, the staffing really is just deriving the benefit of the contractual obligated salary and step increases. There's no extra shifting of FTEs going on here.
Thank you. Through the chair to the administration, on page 558, why have commercial services gone up by $500,000?
Well, this one, Mr. Chairman, is that every other year shift related to New York State CHIPS funding. I'm just going to pick a year. Year one, you're going to see more commercial services costs. And in year two, you're going to see more supplies and materials. And it's just how DOT shifts the work between its own staff and farms out to our towns.
Thank you. Through the chair to the administration, again on page 558, why have public work services for towns gone up by $1 million?
That's right, Mr. Chairman. That's the shift from
Is
year
that
to
the
year.
shift? Thank you. And through the chair on page 559, why have project chargebacks dropped so much?
So this is a conversation we have each year with DOT. The project chargebacks in DOT are primarily for federally funded projects and some state-funded projects. On those, they actually allow an administrative upcharge for overhead. So if you spend $1, we can just tack on, I don't know, another 68%. That's huge.
What percent?
68%, Mr. Chairman.
That is huge.
So, you know, we budget our staff in the operating departments, right? But on a federally funded project, when our staff actually work on that project, it kind of makes sense to redivert their charge to the capital project and get the reimbursement.
Thank you. Through the chair to the administration, staying on the same page of 559, why was the 2022 amended budget for fleet maintenance costs so high compared to the 2022 proposed budget? And then why is there the increase in 2023? And do we expect to foresee another sharp increase?
Mr. Chairman, in 2022, we did come to the full legislature for a third quarter reappropriation. We did a lot of shifting between departments for higher utility cost, diesel fuel, and gasoline. DOT department uses a lot of diesel fuel and gasoline, and I don't have the number in front of me, but I know we transferred appropriations into DOT. The chargebacks are also coming from fleet maintenance that really supplies most of the diesel fuel and gasoline. So at least with DOT, you're going to see a lot of fluctuation in their amended budgets, especially for chargebacks.
Thank you. Through the chair to the administration, on page 560, why is there a $350,000 increase in the budget for your electric utilities?
So, Mr. Chairman, our contractor, Fluent Energy, helps us project, help us, they do most of the work, right? They help us project a utility cost, and I do know that the utility expenses directly charged to DOT increased in 22, so that was part of our third quarter reappropriation, and this budget is kind of in a similar fashion following that.
Thank you. And through the chair, staying on page 560, can you explain what the line item entitled Provision Capital Project is and why it's new?
Those are our cash funding of projects, and this particular one is for replacement vehicles. DOT has a long history of budgeting within the various divisions, specific replacement pickup trucks, vans, sedans. But over the past several years, there have been at least a couple reorganizations of DOT divisions. That, plus the fact that they are the director's vehicles, a vehicle we purchase and authorize to, Bob this year could be transferred to Steve next year. So rather than try and budget for the purchase of vehicles in any particular division, we worked with DOT management to create a new capital fund for replacement vehicles. A replacement vehicle is very specific because when you bond for it, you only get a 3-year payback. 3 years, not a lot of time. They replace vehicles every single year. It made sense budgetarily for the predictability and the stability to budget going forward $125,000. And if they were able to purchase a vehicle less than they thought it might cost, because the dollars are in a capital fund, it rolls forward to the next year.
Thank you. Through the chair to the administration, again, staying on page 560, kind of the exact same question, but on the bond anticipation note. Can you tell us what that is and why it's a new line item?
That's specifically, Mr. Chairman, for the full redemption of a bond anticipation note we sold just a few weeks ago. This is related to a highway lighting program. And I'd like to do that because highway lighting does not have specific statutory bonding authority, so we have to use a generic. It comes with a 5-year payback. The highway lighting projects are pretty costly, and to try and shoehorn that debt service in a 5-year payback, let's save the bond issuance cost and use the excess unrestricted funds within our debt service to fully redeem that note.
Thank you. Through the chair to the administration, looking at page 562, why is there no temporary help requested this year for the Highway and Bridge Engineering Division?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I missed the first part of that question.
Oh, sure. Through the chair to the administration on page 562, why is there no temporary help requested this year for the Highway and Bridge Engineering Division?
Oh, Mr. Chair, really, that's the grant we get for the O'Rourke Bridge. Now, your grant used to come every single year. I believe it's gone to every other year. Is that correct, Don? Yes, it's every other year. So we actually already received that. It's in a grant fund for DOT and will carry forward.
Thank you. And through the chair to the administration, on page 328 under revenue, in the traffic operations and permits division, why is there such a large increase in projected license and permit fees after being flat between 2021 and 2022?
Honestly, Mr. Chairman, that's just the estimate from DOT management on their projection of work and the permits that will be issued for that other work.
Thank you. And through the chair to the administration, starting on page 688, why is so much more fund balance being used so much more this year by each division except highway and bridge engineering when it hasn't been previously? And why is highway and bridge engineering going down so much?
So, Mr. Chairman, on this particular page is the first line, fund balance. It's the $1 million. That's the excess fund balance. That rather than apportion that to all the divisions, we just account for it in administration. It just makes sense rather than try and, we really don't have a basis, mathematical basis for apportioning this to all the divisions. So it makes better sense just to account for it in administration. The other uses of fund balance, Mr. Chairman, are again, the bond anticipation note redemption and our reserve for bonded debt. For any new legislators that doesn't know how the reserve for bonded debt works, when we have a capital project that we issue bonds for, normally we issue bonds early, and then for not the full project, we wait for the project to close and then borrow the remaining to make sure we don't borrow too much. For some projects that are short-lived, like a 5-year payback, we can't do that. We have to bond right up front, or at least in the first couple of years, and take our best guess at what the project will cost. We also, and because of that, if the project comes in under budget, then we actually borrowed too much. So those surplus bond proceeds, coupled with any premium we earned on that bond issuance, can only be used to satisfy that capital project's future debt service. So we transfer the excess dollars to our reserve for bonded debt. We pigeonhole it to that particular capital fund. And then when next year's debt service comes up, we use as much reserve for bonded debt as the debt service until it's fully utilized.
Thank you. And through the chair, to the administration, looking over the personnel on page 738, why is there one less transportation project manager position at group 20?
Through the chair, in order to meet budget and looking at the workload, we decided that we didn't need that fourth position at this time. So we strictly defunded it.
Thank you. Through the chair to the administration, why is there one more engineer at group 15?
Through the chair, that's what we transferred the previous position to. We felt that we'd get better use out of an engineer 15 than a TPM.
Thank you. And through the chair to the administration, why is there one more senior highway maintenance mechanic and one less senior signal mechanic at group 12?
Through the chair, we're strictly rebalancing the positions to where our needs are.
Thank you. Staying on page 738, through the chair to the administration, why is there one more sign fabrication technician at group 11?
Through the chair, for the same reason I previously stated, we're just trying to reshuffle from some positions to where the needs are.
Thank you. And I'm just going to wrap up the next two questions, and I'm guessing it's the same answer. You have two more highway maintenance mechanics at group 10, and there are 3 fewer highway maintenance mechanics at group 8. Same reason, just reallocating?
Yeah, through the chair, yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then through the chair to the administration, why was a traffic control operator downgraded to a part-time group 9?
Through the chair, we have a traffic control operator that basically retired and came back part-time in a full-time position.
Thank you. And one last question around the personnel. Why is there only a half a seasonal laborer for the whole DOT?
Through the chair, that's for our pavement marking section. They only stripe the roads when the weather's good, so we only need a seasonal person.
Thank you. I yield the floor.
Legislator Colby.
Thank you, Chairman. Couple follow-up questions. Well, she was asking all the questions about the move and employees from different groups. Were they pretty much the same employees and just moved around? Or were employees let go and new employees hired through the chair?
Through the chair, there are actually vacancies that we have. And because they're vacant now, we're reshuffling the positions to where we think we can hire somebody where the needs are.
That was through the chair. How many vacancies of how many full-time employees do you have in your division? How many of them are vacant?
Mr. Chairman, questions regarding the number of vacancies changes from day to day, and the
Okay.
budget office has resisted providing that information because the reports are essentially obsolete.
The day you make it. Thank you. Through the chair, you talked about the electric cost going up through the, because of the electric company telling you that's what might be. Are the electric charging stations for cars that we don't charge at for the public use, is that part of the, is that underneath that part of the budget, or is it somewhere else in the budget?
Mr. Chairman, those are accounted for in fleet operations, so that would be a chargeback to user departments.
And you said that, through the chair, you said that the $1 million that I asked about earlier came out of reserve funds for transportation leftovers. Is that correct?
Surplus fund balance, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. How much, after taking that $1 million out, is there any left in that budget?
There is, Mr. Chairman.
How much is that amount through the, Mr. Chairman? Do you
I
know?
would have to go from memory, and I don't want to do that, so I'll follow up.
Thank you. And one other question, and I'm, see if I can get back to the right page. On 330, I think you answered this. I think I know the answer, but just a clarification. On the second line, on the provisional capital budgets, it goes from 1.2 to 4.3. Is that because we're increasing the cash capital projects?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and specifically the culvert replacement
Okay.
program and milling resurfacing.
I thought that was the same number. Thank you. I'll yield the floor.
Are there any further questions? Legislator Hassman?
Probably a question more for the Department of Transportation. Happy to see the active transportation plan. I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you plan to begin that implementation.
Through the chair, we are working with our planning department and providing comments through that. And we also have a complete streets policy that we follow on all of our projects.
Any further questions? Well, I'd like to thank Mr. Franklin for the budget presentation and the DOT staff for responding to our questions. Next item on our agenda is the approval of minutes. You have the June 29th, 2022 minutes before you. They'll stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. New business. Next item on the agenda is new business. Mr. Clerk.
Referral 22-0405. Authorize a traffic signal agreement with PMM Culver to perform traffic signal operation and maintenance services for traffic signal number 324 located at the intersection of Culver Road and Brookdale Park in the town of Arundecoit.
Moved by legislator Colby, second by legislator Smith. Any questions? Legislator Smith.
While Penn Culver LLC is paying for the county $1,050 for this agreement, are there any other parts that the county will be responsible for?
Through the chair, that fee covers parts and maintenance.
Thank you. And through this chair to the administration, is there a length of this contract?
No, through the chair, no.
Thank you. I yield the floor.
Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Are there any other matters to come before the committee this evening? Okay, there being no other matters, the November 29, 22 meeting of the Transportation Committee stands adjourned. The next meeting of the Transportation Committee will be held on Tuesday, December 20th, 2022 at 5:15 PM.